Hey Eagle fans, it's EaglefanKarl. This is going to be my prediction video for Christmas night against the Oakland Raiders. But before I do that, I do want to quickly go through some studs and duds from the Giants game since I didn't get an opportunity to do that. If you haven't checked it out, by the way, I did do a video of the whole day we had up there at MetLife Stadium. Had some thoughts that I gave after the game that's at the end of that video, but didn't take the time to do a full studs and duds. But I do want to give out some studs and duds for that game. So let's go ahead and take one quick look at the Giants game and give us some studs and duds for the week. And since it was a win, we'll go ahead and start with the bad first, and that starts with the duds. And because of the way the team played, I had really no trouble coming up with 5 duds for this game. My number 5 dud is going to be Najee Good for the boneheaded, offsides that negates a stop. And then ends up giving the Giants an extension on their drive. He jumps off sides on the punt play, of course. And then the Giants end up getting 7 points out of that drive. So for that reason, Najee Good makes the list. My number 4 dud is going to be LeGarrette Blount. He really has been sort of invisible, and that 4th and 1 is a critical play. He needs to get that extra yardage and do what he can to fight for it. And he came up small. But the next 3, 2, and 1 are all going to be guys in the secondary because the secondary just played terribly in this game. My number 3 is going to be Ronald Darby. He would probably actually be number 1 had it not been for the interception he got. So he did redeem himself a little bit. So that's why he's only my number 3 dud. My number 2 dud is going to be Rodney McLeod. Almost completely because of that horrible angle he took on that one touchdown where it was just a 5 to 8 yard route or whatever it was. And he just took a bad angle on the receiver, and the receiver was able to break it for a 50-yard touchdown. So McLeod makes number 2. And then number 1, of course, is going to be Jalen Mills, who had a terrible game, starting right off the bat with the holding call that extends the first drive and allows them to get a touchdown on their first drive after we had stopped them and would have held them to a field goal. And then he bites on the touchdown that does occur, where he bites for the inside move, and the guy easily gets open in the back corner of the end zone. And just from there, it just didn't get much better for Mills throughout the game. So those are my 5 duds for the week. For my studs, I'm going to there's going to be a tie for second place. So for third place, though, I am going to have one guy on defense that did come up with a huge play. And that was Brandon Graham, who made the big tackle that forced the Giants way back. And then ultimately that means that the Giants were driving at that point. He comes up with a big tackle on a running play. It was like a loss of 12 yards or something like that. And ultimately that makes the Giants have to settle for a field goal attempt, which we then block. So that was a great, series of plays there for the Eagles, and Brandon Graham started that off with a big run stop at a time we desperately needed a big play on defense. For my second stud of the game, I've actually got a 3-way tie for the 3 guys that came up with blocks in this game. The first one was the extra point. That was Derek Barnett. The second one was the punt. That was Kamu Grugier-Hill. And the third one was the field goal. That's Malcolm Jenkins. So those 3 guys all stepped up, made big plays when we really needed it on special teams. I explained in my reaction video afterwards, the importance of that and how that played into the win. And clearly that was the difference in the game, was those 3 plays on special teams. And then my number 1 stud of the game, though, is going to be, Nick Foles for getting put in the situation he was put in. He's got to come in, replace an MVP candidate quarterback. And really, he hasn't started a game in over a year. And it's been a while since he had, any sort of long-term success in starting. So he came in, though, and didn't really miss a beat. Of course, like I had said in my preview video, it's probably a good game to start off with as a backup quarterback if you have to start, is against a defense like the Giants, because the Giants' defense just isn't very good. But he took advantage of what was there. He didn't have eye-popping numbers as it relates to the yardage, but what he did do that was important is, number 1, he didn't turn the ball over, and number 2, when we got in the red zone, he put the ball in the end zone. So for those reasons alone, Nick Foles, hey, 4 touchdown passes by Carson Wentz the week before. You come out, throw 4 touchdown passes the next week against the Giants, and it just looks like we didn't even lose a beat on offense, and that was big for this team. And for that reason, Nick Foles was my number 1 stud of the game for the Giants game. Let's go ahead and turn our focus then to the Christmas night game against the Raiders. I'm going to assume that the Eagles are going to still need to win this game. I'm going to assume that the Vikings will beat the Packers, since, the Packers have been eliminated. They put Aaron Rodgers, who wasn't completely healed, they put him on IR, so he's not going to play against the Vikings. So I'm assuming the Vikings will win that game in Green Bay. Now, that if that doesn't happen, that changes a lot of the analysis that I'm going to do here. But I am going to go about it assuming that the Vikings will win that game and the Eagles will need to win this game. The other thing that's sort of interesting about this game, since it comes at the very end of the whole weekend, is right now the Raiders are still technically alive for the playoffs, but they would need some sort of crazy scenario for them to make the playoffs over the next 2 weeks. Specifically, the only way they can make the playoffs is like a 4-way tie for 8-8 for the last wild card spot. I mean, it's really crazy, the different scenarios that have to happen for the Raiders to make it. And they need a couple games to go right for them this weekend, and it's entirely possible. And one of those, by the way, is the Dolphins beating the Chiefs in Kansas City, which I don't think happens. So it's entirely possible that the Raiders will have been eliminated from playoff contention by the time they take the field on Monday night. So I think that also plays into all this, because you've got a team that, their season's been a disappointment as it is. They had expected to potentially contend for the AFC West title, or at least a playoff spot. And now they're coming into the, second to last game of the season against a non-conference opponent on Christmas night, and they've just been eliminated. They're really not going to have much to play for. And I think as a result of that, if the Eagles can really jump on this team early, they could make this thing a blowout and really, make so the Raiders sort of just decide, it's just not worth it, and they're going to end up quitting on the team. And I could absolutely see that potentially happening in this game. The Raiders really had sort of their Super Bowl, so to speak, their last-ditch effort to have a little bit more control of their destiny last week when they played the Cowboys. They lost that game, and that was really, while it didn't completely eliminate them, it basically ended up being an elimination game for them, as it's going to be really hard for them to make the playoffs now, given all the scenarios they need to have happen. When you're looking at stats for this game, though, it's really hard to sort of talk about our offense in this game, because we still really don't know what the offense is without Carson Wentz. What we can say is that the Raiders' defense is really below average in almost every statistical category. And that's because the Raiders are 21st in overall defense as it relates to yardage. They're 19th as it relates to scoring. When you look at their run-pass ratio, they're a little bit better against the run than they are the pass. Their run defense is the only thing where they are in the top half of the NFL, and that's only barely. They're 15th in the NFL in rushing defense. And in passing, they're 23rd in the league in passing defense. And it really starts to take a tumble when you start looking at some of the more specific passing stats. Third down, usually a passing down. They are 27th in the league in giving up third down conversions. And in quarterback rating, in terms of their opponent's quarterback rating, they're 31st in the league in opponent's quarterback rating. So they are second to last. So there's a good sign for Nick Foles, is, they are a team that is not very good at stopping other teams' quarterbacks. Now, of course, we all remember the big game Nick Foles had against them 4 years ago when he puts up the 7-touchdown game out in Oakland. Obviously, don't expect that to happen, and there's a lot of different things between then and now. But I do think that Nick Foles will be able to take advantage of this defense, and I do expect the Eagles will try and probably take a balanced approach in this game. While their running defense is a little bit better, it's not like it's not a top 10 rush defense. So I think we can still try and establish a running game against this team to sort of set up the pass then as well. So I think that we can sort of still have a balanced approach in this game. Nick Foles will be able to have some success against this defense as well. So I think that we will be able to move the ball and be able to score against this defense. So what about the flip side of it? Our defense against their offense. Despite the fact that they've got Marshawn Lynch, they really have not been that good at running the ball this year. And in running the ball, they're actually 25th in the league as it relates to rushing yards. They're 16th in the league in passing offense. So they are a little bit better at the pass than they are the run. Overall, they're 19th in the league in overall yardage, and they're 22nd in scoring. So they're sort of just Mediocre to below mediocre offense pretty much across the board. And when you think that, hey, probably the way you'd want to try and win a game like this, if you were the Raiders, is probably try and establish the run game. When you don't run the ball that well anyway, and you're going up against the Eagles, who are the top-ranked team against the run, I would expect that it's going to be hard for them to do that. I think they're probably going to come out in this game and do the opposite, which is not usually what you want to do on the road, and that's they're going to have to try and throw the ball. Now, the one thing the Giants did do is they sort of reset the playbook on how to beat this defense, which was really, if you look at it, was the same sort of playbook Aaron Rodgers used against us last year when the Packers played us. It's just short slant patterns all day long, and the defense, the way our defense usually plays, they're playing off them. It becomes really problematic. So I would expect that they might try and do that. They've got two good wide receivers. They've got a decent quarterback. You would think that they would be able to do that and move the ball. What the Eagles are going to have to do then is really clamp down and, prevent them from getting long plays. That was the one thing that really killed us against the Giants. It was one thing to be giving up those slant patterns, all the way down the field. But generally then, if the Eagles then can really, clamp down once you get in the red zone and hold them to field goals, it doesn't hurt as much. That's not what was happening against the Giants. They were scoring touchdowns on those drives when they were doing that. So I think it's really important for the Eagles to, number one, make sure that they are keeping guys in front of them, not letting them get behind, because that was another problem we had in this game. If you're going to play that far off wide receivers, you can't let them get behind you and get touchdowns that way. So you really got to make sure that you're keeping guys in front of you and making tackles, because that was another thing that sort of dropped off in the Giants game. We had been such a good tackling team for the first part of the season, and the last week or two, it's just not been as good. So that's another thing. We've really got to pick that up. Now, I do think a lot of that will be able to happen in this game. I think the Eagles will be able to sort of set a tone defensively. They're finally back home. They had played the 3 games in a row on the road, and I think the defense will rise to the occasion given what's happened over the last few weeks. And all this brings up another area where I think the Eagles can really take advantage, and that is in the turnover statistic. The Raiders are 27th in the league in turnover differential. So they have not been good at protecting the ball and getting the ball from other teams. The Eagles have done well in that category. And if we can do that in this game, if we can win the turnover battle and make sure that we're protecting the ball and not giving it up ourselves, I don't see any way we lose this game. And I do sort of see that being the way that this game plays out. I am going to go ahead then and predict the Eagles to win this game. And I think that the Eagles defense actually will shut them out of the end zone. They'll give up field goals, but I don't see them giving up touchdowns in this game. And I really think that they will show up to play in this game. For that reason, my prediction of a score is going to be Eagles 38, Raiders 9. I do want to talk about one more thing before I leave you for this week. And that is something that I've just got to get off my chest. I know this is stupid, but one thing that's really bothering me about this is the Eagles are playing on Christmas Day, Christmas night for that matter, and they have announced that their color scheme is going to be black on black. You're a team that's got green as your main color, and you're playing on Christmas. If anything, you should be going green on green. It makes no sense for a team with a primary color of green to wear black on Christmas Day. It just makes no sense. I don't know what they're thinking with doing that. And if they do lose this game, I'm going to blame it on that, because I'm saying they're tempting fate by not wearing green on Christmas. And, if they end up losing this game, I think they'll have it coming to them. Let me know what you think, though. Let me know what you think the score is going to be. Let me know if you think I'm overreacting on the green thing. I can tell you this much. I am going to be wearing Eagles green on Christmas Day. I hope you will be, too. Maybe that'll sort of offset some of the bad karma I think the Eagles are giving off by wearing black on Christmas. But I'll go ahead and check in after the game, let you know what I think. Until then, fly Eagles fly.